G'day, I'm Ian Field from Leap Farm down at Copping in southern Tassie. We're a cattle and goat enterprise. We run cattle and goats for meat. We have a goat dairy we value add through into both meat and cheese. We've only been farming though for 14 years. So we came to farming, me from an academic background and my wife from a medical background. And that enabled us to just start where we wanted to start, which I had all this information in my head of how natural systems work from being an ecologist, and that's what I wanted to put into practice on a farm. I used to stand up in front of a class and say, this is how natural systems work, this is how we can harness them in primary production, and that's what we set about trying to do. I felt such a fraud saying it in front of a class, and then I felt such a fraud as a farmer, but 14 years later, it's working for us, and we're harnessing those efficiencies of nature on our farm. For us, nature-friendly farming is simply working with anything that nature can help us get an advantage with, whether that's in the simplest terms, using gravity, or in other ways of trying to minimize metabolic energy use for our livestock so that they can put more energy into growing or into reproduction, or planting trees and shelter belts to minimize and capture more energy within our system and increase our nutrient turnover and cycling within our system. So nature-friendly farming goes across the board in terms of our physical operation, but we also harness it into our decision making. So everything we do, we think of two main tenets of ecology, and that's incorporating diversity and energy efficiency, and we build those into all of our systems. This is crucial for Australian farming now, as we're seeing our dependence on external resources and energy costs going up all the time. We need to harness these efficiencies of nature that allow us to break that a little bit and therefore reduce our costs and make us more cost efficient in terms of what we do. Being first generation farmers, we haven't necessarily seen a massive change because we stand on the shoulders of giants here. The farmers that had our land before us were also farming in a way that promoted soil health above most other things, and then the landscape health that came from that. So we've been able to build upon that. So seeing stark contrasts isn't necessarily that simple for us, but what we've been able to do is harness these efficiencies of nature, look to landscape health, look to soil health, and then build upon that to the point where we now have soil carbon levels of 7 to 9% and organic matter within our system of 14 to 16%, which is, well, it's not quite the norm. But what that allows us to do is focus on that nutrient cycling, make sure we're getting the best nutrient cycling we can across the whole farm. And then by building in what we call biodiversity islands, which is where we fence off tree stands and then we allow them to be centers of biodiversity that can then leak out into the rest of the farm. So we have excellent pollination from all the bugs that live there, the frogs that live toward the creeks that have been fenced off. And that just allows us to harness those benefits of having lots of biodiversity on farm. So nature-friendly farming works for us. But the recent study in the Farming for the Future program showed that it works across most farming systems in Australia. Admittedly, it was based on sheep and cattle stations, but it showed that the more natural capital you have on a farm, the more productive you are and the more profitable you can be. So it's certainly applicable in most systems. And as part of my Nuffield scholarship, I travelled the world looking at how other farmers do things. And there's some really innovative ways where any farming system can work with the efficiencies of nature. And whether that's through companion planting in horticulture and cropping, whether it's long-term herbal lays in dairy systems, there's lots of different ways we can work with nature to get the benefits that come with it. And so all farming systems have that opportunity, and we find that those that are multi-valued tend to be those that are more stable. And as we go into a more volatile environment in terms of costs of farming and the climate, this actually enables us to become just a more stable system, and so we have more reliable income, we have more reliable systems that allow us to keep going. But we're also seeing that that's allowing us to produce a premium product. So what that allows us to do is to make sure that we always have enough feed, or we always have enough energy within the system to make the production work. And it's through having that energy efficiency that you can really power ahead even when you're subject to quite a lot of different pressure upon the farm. If we want to see rapid adoption of nature-friendly farming in Australia, we can't rely on the status quo. We can't rely on market forces to try and drive this. We need farmers to be able to harness the value that they have on farm of natural capital and biodiversity and nature-friendly farming, and we need to support them to do that. That's going to need a change in our financial institutions' direction. It's also going to need to be publicly supported as well. If we can do that, we can really make rapid change very quickly.